On this channel, I take pride in the fact I share my investment portfolio with you guys. In fact, one of the main reasons I started doing YouTube was I felt that no one was really showing what they had invested. And from my personal perspective, it's much easier for me to listen to advice, or more importantly, believe someone if they're actually doing the thing they're trying to teach themselves. In fact, I think there's far too many people giving advice, and for all we know, they may not even be investing in the first place. In fairness, this has gotten better since I first started, but there's also a ton of conflicting advice. People are recommending things because it will get them more views, and it seems to be the latest trend that people are showcasing different exchange-traded funds to buy every week, which can be quite dangerous and could cost you a ton of money, which I'm trying my best to address. Now, beyond just showing you my portfolio, I've had a lot of people asking me to dive deeper into my strategy and how I plan to build a £1 million investment portfolio. For those of you new to the channel, I'm Chris. I've been investing for over 15 years now, and I've helped people do the same for the last 3. I've currently just over £250,000 in my investment portfolio, and I've built another £100,000 before this too. I like to think I've done okay for myself, and I'm currently on this journey just like you. I'm by no means a millionaire or some kind of get-rich-quick day trader or running some kind of forex scheme. If you're looking for that, this video probably isn't for you. But if you're looking for something more achievable and relatable, then I think this video will be super valuable to you. And my hope is that by sharing this with you, you can do even better than me, by not making some of the expensive mistakes that I have and retire earlier if that's even your goal. So let me give you an update on my current investing strategy going forward. First off, let's talk about where I'm actually trying to go, because there's no point in me telling you my strategy if we don't know where we're going. It all started with me wanting FU money. No, not the kind you blow on yachts and supercars, FU as in freedom unlocked. By that, I mean I wanted 3 things. One is I wanted a safety net, so if something was to happen to my business, I'd have some money to sustain myself. 2 is I wanted the flexibility and freedom to decide when and where I worked and what projects I worked on. That sort of thing doesn't come immediately by any means, but something I strive towards. And 3 was the ability to retire early tax-free, so I didn't have to pay any more tax when I retired. This was wrong and possibly one of the biggest changes to my investing strategy to date. I think a lot of you watching this video may actually be making the same mistake, which in hindsight did hinder me. I had this sort of tunnel vision when it came to ISAs. I was filling my ISA every single year, and I've done so for every year except for 2 or 3. At least 10 years I filled the £20,000 limit, which is pretty crazy when I say it out loud. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't sacrifice a lot to get to that point. I could have travelled more, but I still had 2 or 3 trips away each year, some in the UK and some abroad. In fact, what did hinder me more than anything was needing to try and run my business while travelling, and my partner at the time having a job which he couldn't travel with. Looking back, I could have designed the systems better to do so. While the ISA was good, all of my money grew tax-free and I pay no tax on the way out. What I was missing was the extra growth on my money that I would have gotten with a SIP or a pension account because of the tax relief you get added. When you add this up in the long run, you're better off in a SIP than an ISA because it will give you more money in the long run even with paid tax. So I got tunnel vision from being so anti-establishment and wanting to free myself from it, which I imagine people are now feeling more than ever with the state of the country. So for years I funneled money into my ISA and it was my primary goal. In fact, it was only recently, when I started this YouTube channel, I started taking the pension seriously. This was mostly because the income I generated from YouTube pushed me into the higher tax bracket, and in this bracket I essentially get 40% relief on the income, so I pay 20% tax on that money, but I get 20% back in my pension. This account allows the money to grow much quicker, and I've built that up to over £100,000 now, which I've been documenting here on this channel. And I've actually slowed my ISA contributions down this year, which has been difficult for me to say the least. I literally feel like some kind of ISA addict. Now I've shifted primarily towards my SIP, which I'll break down in more detail a little later. So my initial goal was to have this sense of freedom and retire as soon as possible and just focus on building the biggest investment account possible. But my view on this has shifted, and I also think this is important to recognise. Your investment goals can actually change. I've been investing extremely aggressively to hit the last 100k that I've built. pretty much because it was a fun challenge to do on this channel, but it's not really sustainable or the right thing to do. Even toning down my investing, if I was to invest at this rate, an average of £3,000 per month, at the modest rate of 7% returns, that would give me 3.8 million at 60, which on the surface of it sounds great, but do I really need 3.8 million at 60? There's two problems with this. First, the lifetime allowance, which currently isn't in play at the moment, but it will likely be reinstated soon, certainly by the time I get there. If I had 3.8 million in a pension, the effective rate of tax is 55% over the threshold, so I would be looking at 1.54 million in tax, which would just be stupid. Of course, I wouldn't have it all within a pension, but you get the idea. At this rate, I would be over investing. That might seem quite unrealistic an amount to invest each month and as a goal, but I could do that, as long as I got the average market conditions. The problem is, however, I don't really want to pay that tax. But second is the trade-off, and this is a question to ask. Is it really worth sacrificing that time and enjoyment now to have it all in the future? Sadly, I currently know two people who have terminal brain cancer, one in his late 40s, and one is 1 year away from retirement age. Every other month, my dad, who's 60, has a friend or someone he knows who's just died for retirement. Now, while that's very sad, it's a reminder that life isn't all about living for the future. As my dad always says, you don't want to be the richest man in the graveyard. So it's very important to find that balance, which is what I'm realizing more and more. But it's important to have enough and to do what you want, and this is what's tricky. You don't want to, and I certainly don't want to, make my life all about retiring. And this is what I've recognized recently more than ever. As much as I would love to travel more and have complete freedom, I'm very much the type of person that likes to be working on something or doing something. Even when I'm traveling, I'm coming up with ideas on what to do or build next. One of the biggest switches I've had, especially in my 30s, is recognizing the type of work I want to do. Now, this isn't something I've ever shared publicly, as I do like to keep my work separate. So on one hand, I make these videos, which are great, and I get a positive comment that it's helped someone. It really makes my day. And I'm able to make a really positive impact through the work I'm doing, and hopefully help improve people's lives through giving them a better financial future. This has been so rewarding for me. Second is, you may have heard me mention that my other business is a web design agency, and it's what I've done pretty much since I was 18. Crazy to think I'm still doing it nearly 16 years later. But I've also had a shift in that business too. Instead of working on one-off projects, I've been more involved with some. A big one I've been involved with since its inception is a site called AgeSpace, which is essentially a website with a ton of free resources, all for people who are caring for elderly parents who need some extra support, be it dementia or just day-to-day life. This hits home with me, as my granddad has recently been diagnosed with dementia, and it's been such a great resource. We're up to 100,000 visitors per month now, which is incredible to think of, and I've also set up a Facebook group as part of it called Caring for Elderly Parents UK, which has such a great bunch of people in it, supporting each other and sharing advice. These two things have been super rewarding for me, and it makes me feel like the work I do is having some kind of impact in the world, which might seem silly, but it's been a huge shift for me. Purpose has really been the main goal of my 30s, whereas before that it was much more financially driven. Don't get me wrong, I still want to make money, but if I can do that in a way that provides more value, it's so much better. I share these with you because these are really what shaped my investing journey so far, and got me to this point where I'm in now, where I'm toning down my investing. It's not so much that I'm stopping, more as where I was going full force before. I'm hitting the brakes, slowing down, and navigating the next steps, which I've also got to come in life, which I think you should do too. People often come to me and they've been focused on paying their mortgage, wondering if it's the right thing to do, and honestly, your strategy should change as you go along. So now you understand that, let me talk about what my current goal is for my investments and what I'm trying to do here. But before we do that, I want to say a huge thank you to today's sponsors, Stockopedia. I recently made the switch from Simply Wall Street over to Stockopedia, and after reaching out to them, they have been kind enough to sponsor today's video, which is great. I use Stockopedia to help me pick stocks in my stock portfolio, which makes it part of my investing strategy. I switched partly because it looked way better as a tool, but they're also a UK-based company, and I love to do what I can to support UK business businesses, and I've been really impressed so far. You can gain access to institutional quality data on over 35,000 stocks across multiple markets. With Stockopedia, you'll be able to deliver hidden gems with the potential to deliver market-beating returns that others might miss. The proprietary stock rank system simplifies the process of evaluating stocks, providing you with a clear score between 0 and 100 based on the proven fact investing principles of quality, value, and momentum. The easy-to-visualize traffic light system shows you when companies' financial health is strong or needs caution. Stockopedia's portfolio analysis tools give you the power to compare stocks against their industry and market peers, instantly identify and weed out low-return stocks, helping you build a stronger, more resilient portfolio. You'll also be able to screen new opportunities based on your investment criteria by using any of the 350 stats available to you, like dividend yield and price-to-earnings ratio. It lets you feel more confident in your investment decisions with reliable financial data. The forensic analytics assess the risks in hidden company financial statements so you can sleep easier knowing you're reducing your exposure to potential losses. Sign up for Stockopedia today and unlock a world of powerful insights and cutting-edge tools. It's a time-saving solution to get instant fixes on stock merits without hours of tedious research. Take control of your investments, save time, and start making better stock market decisions. Viewers of the channel will also be entitled to a 25% discount and a 14-day free trial on any annual plan by using the link in the video description, or you can enter the coupon CP25 at checkout. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. First, how much do I actually need to retire? By working out this figure, we can work backwards to work out how much we need to invest. So when we want to work out how much we need in retirement, this site is really good to look at. This is a retirement living standards. This is essentially a report that's been put together which tries to give us an idea of how much we might need in retirement. So here you can filter whether you're in a single or you're in a couple. I always think it's good to look at a single because, let's face it, you never know. It's always good to support yourself. So this gives you some different scenarios. There's a minimum, which is $14,000 a year, moderate $31,000 a year, and comfortable $43,000. It has different categories like house, food, transport, holidays, clothing, and helping others, and how much you could need per year. We'll take a look at the comfortable. Now this has got a little bit more complicated, so bear with me. So the house, it presumes you would replace your kitchen and bathroom every 10 to 15 years. For food, you would spend around £70 a week on food, £40 out of the home, £20 a week on takeaways, and £100 once a month to take others out for a monthly meal. For transport, a 3-year-old small car replaced every 5 years, £20 a month on taxis, £200 a year on rail fares. That seems a little bit high. Maybe this is based around a city now to be a bit more realistic. And it also adds a fortnight 4-star holiday in the Med, with spending money and 3 long breaks in the UK, and also an extensive bundled broadband and TV subscription, and up to £1,500 a year to buy clothing, which I think is a bit excessive, and £50 a year each for birthday presents, which I don't think is actually very much these days. So that is kind of a vague idea. Of course, some things you want to spend more on and some things less. I don't spend much on things like cars, not very much on clothing, but I would probably spend more on presents and probably travelling abroad more. So if we take the comfortable, that's £43,000 per year. Now I'm going to say that's quite high. You can survive on way less. You can go for the minimum, which you can take a look at here. Of course, this is going to presume you have got your mortgage paid off and you haven't got mortgage or rent to pay for as well, which we also need to consider. Now using that figure, you could use something called the 4% rule. And what you would do is times the amount by 25 and it would give you an amount you need. What that does is assume that you could withdraw 4% of your total value and then withdraw the same amount every single year, and it would take into account inflation, and that would last you 30 years. But a much better way is to actually use something called the pension calculator on the Vanguard website. This is free to use and you could use it. So let's take, for example, that amount. So I'll put in the £43,100 per year. So then we say my current age is 35. Of course, the sooner you can start, the better. I want to retire early, so I'm going to go for 60, but of course you could go for 67, whatever you want to retire. And let's put my monthly pension contribution of £2,000, and we're going to increase it for inflation. So that means that I'll put the amount I invest up every single year in line with inflation. And I'll put my current pension savings, which is £102,000. Of course, I'm not putting my ISA in here. This is just a rough idea. And now this is where it gets a bit interesting. So I've got medium, high, and low. So these are different rates. Now I always like to use 7%, but we will will go for high just because it's a bit closer than the medium. Now, of course, you can play around with these figures. That would actually give me £52,000 per year with an estimated pot of 1.4 million, which is probably way more than I would need. But you can come in here and tinker with these figures and it will give you different results based on your goal. Of course, this is very simple. It doesn't take into account things like a lifetime ISA or your ISA and really kind of staggered investment stages. If you want more complex forecasts, you will need more advanced software, which is something an independent financial advisor could help with. If you want to go down that route, Unbiased is a pretty good site if you're looking for one that has that kind of detail. Now, because the goal is so complex, this is where I think it gets trickier, and I think the 25x or 4% rule, whichever way you look at it, is a good guideline on what to aim for. I prefer not to rely on the state pension if I can, as it's so up in the air. I do actually wonder what it will be like in 30 years' time when I could claim it. I think it could even be means tested and I wouldn't qualify it. Hopefully it won't be, but I think it's good to think of the worst case scenarios. My goal at the moment is to strip back my investments as I navigate buying a property in the coming months. That will also play a part in my plans as I need to focus on overpaying my mortgage to bring it in line with my retirement goals. For example, it's no good me trying to retire at age 55 if my mortgage finishes age 75. So that will have a big impact on my plans and I will keep adapting to it. I'm easing on the brakes as I've been so heavily investing. Actually, 100% of my income from this channel has been invested into a pension, as well as me contributing to other accounts. So for now, this is what I've done. So I'm aiming to contribute £1,000 per month into my SIP. I need to do this as my first priority as I still have income over the basic threshold. And if I don't pay it in, it's subject to 40% tax, so it's a no-brainer. This may need to increase and me put in a higher amount either later in the tax year or as a lump sum, depending on how much I earn for the year. All higher income needs to go into there to reduce my tax bill. After that, my next priority is my lifetime ISA. Now, I know a lot of people dislike the lifetime ISA, but I think it's great for retirement. I can put £4,000 in per year and the government will give me 25% or £1,000 to top that up. I can only contribute into this account till I'm age 50, so from then money will likely go into my SIP instead. This money is locked until age 60, but because of the bonus they give you and the fact you pay no tax till you can get out, it's actually the biggest bonus you can get and beats both the SIP and the lifetime. But because of the bonus they give you and the fact you pay no tax on the way out, it's actually the biggest bonus you can get and it beats both the SIP and the ISA in terms of the returns for the amount you contribute. The way I like to look at it is it will either be used as a bridge to save me from withdrawing from my pension, or I'll use it to buy something I really want age 60. Maybe something like a property abroad, or maybe I'll help the kids out. I can decide that later on. I could even use it to finish paying my mortgage. The longer I can avoid withdrawing from my pension, the more it will compound and the more it'll be worth. But of course, that would depend if I got close to the lifetime allowance limit, which hopefully I won't, as I will adjust accordingly. So in my lifetime ISA, I'm aiming to contribute £333.33 per month, which works out to be £4,000 a year, which means I'm maximising that account. After that, I've got my ISA. As I'm recording this, my ISA is actually worth more than my SIP, which honestly is the wrong way around. Right now, my ISA is worth £139,000 and my SIP is worth £103,000. In theory, this should be more of a 2-to-1 ratio, which means my SIP should be at £280,000, while my ISA should be at £51,000. This isn't a huge issue as I like having the ISA, but based on this, I'm reducing my ISA contributions down to £500 per month, half of what I'm adding to the SIP for now. As I mentioned, the SIP contributions will likely go much higher too. So between the three, I'm getting, with the bonuses, £1,250 in my SIP, £416 into my lifetime ISA, and £500 into my ISA each month, totaling £2,166 added each month. It's not huge compared to what I have been adding, but for now it will allow me more breathing room in terms of buying a house and overpaying the mortgage. I may have to reduce this or I may have to increase it depending on how the bills and renovations go. The good thing is, not that I want to do it, if I was struggling with a property, the ISA is a £139,000 safety net that I can fall back on if something were to go wrong with my businesses or YouTube. I have got options. And this is what I think is a big consideration, is flexibility and safety. Although the pension will give me a much better pot in the future, the ISA does give me much more flexibility as I can withdraw it at any point. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, I think the SIP and the ISA and probably now the lifetime ISA are honestly now all targets of the changes in government, and they could decide to focus on them if they decide they need to generate more tax. Suggested changes like reducing pension relief and limits on ISAs could be implemented in the future, which would completely change my goals. A good way I like to think of it is if you have a goal in the future. So for example, I now know my target is £1 million. What I can do is run through my sums on a typical compound interest calculator, which shows my returns per year. Let me show you how you can do this quickly for yourselves. If I hop over to the compound interest calculator, and this one's the most common one, and if I pop in my total, currently £103,000, I can put in my average return of 7%, 22 years, which takes me to 57, and I'm adding 1,250 per month. This takes me to 1.25 million by the time I want to retire. Again, this may adjust depending on the lifetime allowance, but if you scroll down, you can see this table breakdown by year. What I can then do is hit on the button here and click Export as CSV. This file can then be imported to Google Sheets, which is free, or you can use a spreadsheet if you have Excel. And then you can grab this data at the bottom and clean it up. Add another row here and just enter your age now until the age you retire. Mine's 35 until 57. Then if I delete the other columns, you get a target number by age. This way you can see where you're at now versus where you should be. So each year I can hop in here and see where my portfolio is compared to where I want it to be and decide whether I want to invest more or less depending on how it's performing. This is a super simple way you can create a portfolio benchmark for yourselves, which I'd recommend doing, and it's how I track where I'm up to. In terms of what I'm actually invested in, all of my investments within my ISA and SIP are with Vanguard. My SIP has a Vanguard Developed World Fund and I'm 100% within this one. I chose this fund because it's nice and diverse, which keeps it low risk for me. It seeks to track the FTSE Developed World Index. This has lots of mid and large sized companies in developed countries across the globe. It has over 2,000 companies in it and it's got a nice low management charge of just 0.12%. It is quite heavily weighted towards the US with 68%, followed by nearly 7% in Japan, 4% in the UK, and the rest is quite evenly split. Over the last year, this fund is up 24%, 20% over the past 3 years, and 80% over the past 5 years, which is extremely impressive. Of course, this doesn't dictate future results, so take these with a pinch of salt. This also does actually pay me a dividend of 1.54%, which I just simply reinvest when it gets paid out to me. The reason it's this version of the fund and not the accumulation fund is because Vanguard has only recently added that version to the platform. For those of you who don't know, the accumulation version essentially just reinvests the dividends for you, and in my opinion, it's better. This is the one I've got on my ISA, so it's the same fund, just the accumulation version. I have 90% in there and 10% in the Vanguard Emerging Markets Fund. These are classed as the less developed countries, which is debatable if you should have them in your portfolio or not. A lot of people say you should to have a well-balanced portfolio. If you want to see this in more detail, you can check out my 2 Vanguard strategy video, which explains it in more depth. I've also decided to include them within my ISA to see the difference, and they make up 10%. I use Invest Engine's rebalancing tool to make sure they stay at that ratio. My lifetime ISA is a little different. Because of the pricing structure of Hargreaves Lansdown, I was in the HSBC FTSE All World, but because it's an uncapped fee, I've started buying the Invesco All World Fund, which is a cheap fund with a fee of 0.15%. This is almost identical to my 2-fund strategy, just a little bit more expensive. It's easier, in my opinion, on Hargreaves Lansdown to just have the one fund, as it's not as modern as the other platforms and it doesn't have easy rebalancing features. I also have some holdings in free trade which are frozen in a Russian fund which got delisted, which I'm hoping to get back one day. We'll have to see, and maybe I could combine it into these accounts. And I also can't resist having a bit of fun, and I have a stock portfolio on Trading 212 where I have some individual stocks that sits within a general investment account, so it's not in a tax shelter at the moment. If I have some ISA allowance remaining this year, I'll pop some of it over there to make a more efficient wrapper. I have around 6,000 in here at the moment, so nothing huge, but it's still a lot of fun. Some of my biggest holdings include Nvidia, who are up nearly 100%, which is insane. Rolls-Royce is another good one. Let me know if you'd like me to do a deep dive on this, because I think it would be super fun and it's something I'm still building up. I've not been taking this too seriously, but it has been going pretty well. Since this has been going pretty well, I have been considering continuing this series, building up a stock portfolio again, which I think would be really fun. Let me know what you think. Of course, let me just say again, this is a small fun part of my portfolio too, around 3 to 5% at the moment, not all of it. And after all, I love to invest in index funds, but I also really enjoy the stock market and buying and selling stocks because I think it's just quite fun. As I mentioned, my plan is to keep adapting and investing my strategy as things change. I'm probably going through the biggest change period in my life at the moment financially over the next few years, so I need to be adaptable. My plan is, in more regular portfolio updates, to keep you guys posted on how things go and remain to be as transparent as possible. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you want to check out my latest portfolio update where I reach 100k, you can check it out right. Thanks as always for your support. This journey wouldn't be possible without you, and I will catch you over there.